the hell was that in Cincinnati yesterday? Like, what the hell game was that Pittsburgh ended up winning on the road in overtime after multiple missed field goals and a missed extra point at the end? There was an injury to the long snapper, so Cincinnati was just trying to figure it out and kept having issues with the snap. Missed the extra point, then get to overtime. There was 2 misses in overtime, and each team had a chance to win the game in overtime, and the Steelers somehow figure out a way after beating the hell out of Joe Burrow early in that game, and then they get it done in a big division win yesterday in Cincinnati. The hell
that
was
game
that?
was drunk, man. I mean, that's the only way you can describe it. Like, down the stretch, I'm going, what the hell is happening? But first off, the play by Minkah Fitzpatrick, now I will say this. It was an unbelievable play, but as you pointed out, you had a backup long snapper in. I forget who was calling the game. They did a great job pointing it out. Like, they talked about it being an issue. They knew it might be an issue, and sure enough, it was. And when you watch the play, when you watch enough football, you go, oh, that seems slow. Like, it seemed like the timing was off. Even it could be off a half second, but that's all Minkah Fitzpatrick needed. Now, I will say this, though. That wing defender should have been in protection. You got to block inside out. You know, you got to take the inside guy and make it a longer path.
Further away, yeah.
And that was the problem, is he kicked out and it left a clear path for Minkah Fitzpatrick to make the block and obviously, give Pittsburgh a chance in that one. But it was that was one of those games, like, looking back and forth. Because this is what I took away from it. Like, week one's one of those weeks, you watch the games, you go, like, either something happened I thought that was going to happen, or something was completely the opposite of what I thought was going to happen. That was one where Joe Burrow played so bad, and yet they still had a chance to win it in the end. Like,
crazy.
They still had a chance to win it despite the difficulties of having a couple field goal shots to put the game away, and they couldn't do it because they didn't have a long snapper, which is, not to get off on a tangent, is one of those things I love about football. Like, football is one of those sports where you don't appreciate something until you really need it. And that was one of those times where you go, man, we take for granted the long snappers. We take for granted, the holders. We take for granted all that stuff in special teams. And then we need it and they can't come through, and now it's a problem. But I look back at that, and as much as I kind of go, okay, the Steelers had a good performance. Burrow was kind of off and all that. I go, man, how many turnovers? 5 turnovers?
Yeah, it was a ton.
5 turnovers, and they still had a shot to win in the end. Like, I think that it kind of leads me to think more optimistically about what the Bengals will eventually be. T. Higgins was out with the concussion and all that. Like, I think they're going to be all right. I really do.
They struggled offensively, and they struggled way more than I would have. I think anyone would have prognosticated or anticipated. I don't think that anybody would have thought they would have had that much trouble for that long in a game, especially with the amount of turnovers. So, but it didn't come without a cost, right? I mean, coming out of this game, T.J. Watt put himself so far out in front as a repeat MVP for defense. I mean, that was as dominant a performance as you can get from a defender, and probably the reason why there were so many turnovers is that, him, Cam Hayward, the rest of that group, they had Burrow under duress from the first play, the first snap, and what an amazing effort from that front seven, but you lose them. Now you don't have T.J. Watt. You saw Najee go out. He was injured. Like, they're now all,
he's got the foot injury.
They're already the walking wounded right now, and their offensive output was not. I guess I'm looking at it from the standpoint, if the offense has to do it, the Pittsburgh Steelers are in trouble this season. And if your defense just took as big a hit as it did with losing T.J. Watt, which Pittsburgh is known for putting somebody else out there and them, making a name for themselves. It's happened before. But, I mean, you're talking about a defensive MVP that you just lost. So, and then your captain on your offense. I don't think that it was a great – I think it was a great win for them to get out of the gates and beat Cincinnati, but it was not a great win in terms of coming out of it being healthy and able to move. Yeah, it was a costly win.
Yeah, and that's the fear. They think he's got the torn pec. T.J. Watt. But one of the conversations about Cincinnati was they're gonna fix their offensive line. They go out, they make some moves, they retool it, and the thought is that was one of their major flaws. And
first play, like they are in Burrow's face the first play.
Remember how bad Hakeem Adeniji was, and then they bring in Lyle Collins. I mean, look, this is about as good of a team as you're going to face off the edge. But still, I mean, you tried to address it with Alex Kappa and Ted Karras and Lyle, like all these pieces, and they couldn't get it done. Like it looked as 7 sacks.
Yeah.
Now I will say this: part of that falls due on the play calling and Burrow. Like at some point, because this happened last year, and I remember saying, like, it feels like he's holding on to the football longer than he needs to. And he's a mobile guy, but I don't think you want him running around too much. Otherwise, he's going to get subject to hits and so forth. But at some point, you got to start either game planning around it, or you got to, as a quarterback, you have to start saying, I am going to throw the ball away. My completion percentage is going to take a hit because I'm not going to keep putting us back in third and longs or behind the sticks on downs because of that. Like at some point, you've got to start adjusting your play to not hurt your team in that way. And that's something that I don't know if it's Joe Burrow's got to learn it or Zach Taylor and Brian Callen have to figure that out. But they've got to figure out a better way of protecting him or getting the ball to his hand quick. Because it's not going to be a formula for success down the road.
Jamar Chase is so good, man.
He is good.
Dude, his best catch was the one that didn't even count.
I know.
I mean, it was an unbelievable ball by Burrow, but like the one-hander and almost got his second foot in. That was ridiculous in the end zone.
How did just from a quarterback's eyes, how did Trubisky look? Did it seem like it was some of the same stuff you saw in Chicago, like some of the same throws?
Look, this is the reality, and I can say this as a guy who played, and it was my reality. Like there's two realities that are hard. Like you're just not going to be as accurate as other guys in the league. That's just part of it. Like you get into the league and you go, I don't have the same accuracy as Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Like I'm not as consistent as they are, and you work as hard as you can to become that. But then you have all these other things that kind of prevents you or make it more difficult to ever get there, if you can ever get there, right? And some of those things are the fact that he's on his third team, and he's in a different system, and he's learning as much as you want to act like this. He got all the reps in the offseason. That should be enough. Like it's not. Like go look at Baker Mayfield. Go watch that tape. Go see if he wasn't a little bit off from time to time. I mean, the only dude who looked like he was fine in a new system was really Kirk Cousins. Like, he looked great.
Yeah,
he did.
Justin Jefferson looked great. But let's not forget, he didn't get to a new team. He just got a new coach with a different style of offense, one that still resembles a little bit some stuff he's done in the past with Gary Kubiak. So I think you got to be careful when you're looking at that sort of stuff because it takes a while to build. But look, they got tremendous wide receivers. My concern is we talked about the Najee Harris foot injury. I told you I was a Liz Frank.
Yep.
And if he re-aggravates, it ain't getting better. It's only going to get worse until he gets surgery on it.
They folded him up. They folded him up pretty good. And
the problem is you now don't have a running game. I mean, Warren can come in and help pick up the slack, but Claypool was your leading rusher yesterday. That's not that's not a recipe for success in the AFC North.
And you lost the defensive MVP.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's horrible. It's a horrible deal.
We've taught, like, LaVar, you said growing up a Steeler fan, you've taught, like, they've been known, you run the football, you play defense.
That's right.
The problem is they haven't run the football in years. They've been a bottom 5 rushing team for years, and you saw it again yesterday to where they just couldn't rush the football, and Trubisky was probably throwing it way too much, and it played out. And now the MVP's gone, and you've got injuries to your running back, and I don't. It just this feels like one of those great win, but you're gonna look back on and go. You got to be able to throw the ball.
Like that is the wildest thing. Like I won't say you have to be able to run the ball to be able to throw the ball as much anymore, just because it's just such a focus and it's so geared to throw the ball. But somewhat in the beginning, somewhat maybe even now in the annals of how football is really thought about and how it's played in a very, very strategical, methodical, chess-like way, you do have to be able to run the ball, because if you're able to run the ball, then you force the defense to have to defend the run. And if you're defending the run, then you can't necessarily defend the pass as well unless you have guys that can really, really cover. And then you can cover the box off the right way. But in today's NFL, in today's game, it is so pass first and it's so pass heavy that people would say, well, you don't necessarily have to subscribe to that, that approach, that game plan to be able to run the ball and play defense. But it does need to be present. You do need to have the ability to get the ball to a guy. You saw it with Carolina. You saw it with Cleveland. You saw it with New York. You saw it with Tennessee. You saw it with a lot of – the running back is still a very, very critical key piece to an offense. And if you don't have that element in play and it's just purely pass, then, it's fun for fans to see, a heavy passing game. But it also becomes a more, I guess, preparable, type of deal. We can prepare for just a pass-heavy, pass-first type of approach versus trying to figure out the balance, keeping a defense honest in the way that they approach their game plans.